Count your blessings, ladies and gentlemen, because this is Brian Pillman Jr., and you're listening to the most influential podcast. You're listening to the Pro Wrestling Proverbs.
This isn't some typical fantasy booking. This is the fantasy booking. Wrote in the good book. This is Logan Scripture. And on the seventh day, Logan said, "Let's rebuild the territories."
Well, Logan, long time no talk. It's not like we just did a full hour-long episode 10 minutes ago.
No, we're not marks.
No, we obviously went to bed, came back with a clear head. And it's not like you're about to book the territory or anything.
Booking all of them.
Like, what more could we possibly say about wrestling? So don't say we never did anything for you guys. We're pulling it off. We're pulling a late night here. Logan Scripture.
Yes.
Do you want to explain to the people what Logan Scripture
is? The good book. As you heard, it is not just any fantasy booking. This isn't going to be one that comes to pass. I think you can agree with me. I'm not going to toot my own horn, but I come up with some pretty good things, and sometimes they do come true. I mean, I remember the moment Cody Rhodes became available and the NWA title came back, I was like, oh, he's going to win it.
Yeah.
And it happened. And then there's other times where I predict Hogan gets his comeback and he's going to be the fifth man for Team America, and I had you super excited. And then Terry Bollea happened.
Oof. Brother.
Brother indeed. There's another word that got him in trouble, but we'll stick with brother. But this Logan Scriptures, it's gonna be a fun time. Ideas I have, whether it be things that can happen, or things that should have happened.
Like,
it's all written here in the good book.
Two things. That noise you just heard, I've seen. I don't know if it's the same one, but I've seen multiple versions of this. Logan has somewhere within arm's reach at his workplace, not like at work, like his desk, wherever. He always has like a notebook just filled with just random wrestling things, and I think that's what is that what you just flipped over?
That is, yes.
I think I have one of them in my basement somewhere, like a rock folder with just random Logan thoughts in it. I'll have to see if there's anything good in it. And the second thing, as we said last time, Logan has a plethora of wrestling knowledge that goes almost unrivaled, I think. I've met very few people that even come close to it. I have one person in mind that could rival it. You haven't met him. I want to introduce you guys to each other because I think you guys will get along great. My cousin Aaron,
okay.
I think you guys are one and the same to me. He has just the same amount of knowledge on the same kind of stuff. He likes all the same stuff. I gotta get you guys together. Besides the point.
I know a lot about, characters, gimmicks, territories, locations. One thing that I'm not great at is dates, but I mean, wrestling goes back to the 1880s. Those people that know what happened on the July 1st, 1999 episode of SmackDown, good for you. That's fantastic.
Or if you know who entered 27th in the 2006 Royal Rumble.
I can't wait for us to get popular and someone listen to this, and then, well, actually, it was this guy.
It was the Undertaker.
Come on, how do you not know that?
Yeah, and I know my fair share. I'm not gonna say I'm a fucking dumbass here, but obviously it's not up to the knowledge of Logan, and probably a lot of people here listening probably don't either. So this is kind of, and when we started back on this, I texted to you, we have to use your knowledge, and this,
right.
And what better way to dedicate shows to it. We're covering a wide range of time here. I assume in the future we'll dial in a specific event in the future.
Oh, I'm sure, yeah. Oh, yeah.
This first one that we're going to do, I'll let you get into it here in a second,
Okay.
kind of covers a long time, and
Yeah.
I kind of like how we're doing this as the first one, so I can get proven right for the things I just said about you and your vast wrestling knowledge. Not to put pressure on you, it is almost 2 a.m., so I hopefully you don't mess anything too bad up, or some Mark's gonna yell us on Twitter and say he's the best. I know last time I tried to get you to agree to it, and I wanted to tweet the guys. I know the No DQ guys do that wrestling trivia challenge thing, and we watched a couple of them, and they do a bunch of date stuff and Royal Rumble entries, and that's like a weakness that we just talked about, so that's why we never went through with it. I think you could kick all their asses.
It's the thing. It's a weakness, but it's one of those, like, when people study Jeopardy, you just learn random stupid facts that don't matter.
And it's just like school too. Like when you're in like history class, you shouldn't have to know what date this random battle in World War II happened. I know.
Trust me. It's awful.
I know. Dates
are absolutely terrible. Because the date shouldn't matter. What happened matters. If I tell you a battle, I don't care if you know the date. Tell me why it's relevant. You know, if I tell you a Royal Rumble, I don't care who entered 11th. Tell me why that night's memorable. But yeah, that's the big... It's a downfall. But...
Who cares?
Yeah, I mean... I remember we watched those videos.
With anybody listening to this, or... I'll put my money on you any day.
So I remember we watched those no DQ videos, and besides the date ones, I answered faster than them. Yeah. Granted, that was a few years ago. Few less substances. Few less stressful jobs. So, you know, mine's a little weaker, but I still think it would be tough to touch me.
Yeah, well, one day we might have to actually put that to the test, but we're not going to do that anytime soon. But anyway, let's get started, Logan.
So, I remember when we first started rooming, way back when we started at Central, you admitted a lot of your stuff was probably Attitude Era onward. Like, you knew some...
I would say barely Attitude Era. Probably more beginning of Ruthless Aggression on.
Okay.
My first wrestling match I remember watching is Rock Hogan WrestleMania 18. That's kind of where we're at.
Right.
But then I don't remember. I didn't watch anything before then.
So a big part of wrestling was before Vince Jr. took over, and around the time he did. It's called The Territories. I'm sure you heard about it because every wrestling documentary of anyone that wrestled from the 90s and backward, they talk about how territory system was so important.
Right. I know, like, it went by regions, right?
Yes. You had regions, and even within regions, you had other, like, just off the top of my head, I'm sure I'm going to forget some. Canada had a couple. The biggest one ran by Stu Hart. California had some big stars in California at the time. You know, Freddie Blassie, Pat Patterson, Ray the Crippler Stevens, all with that bleach blonde hair, the tan, kind of the Gorgeous George Ric Flair look. You had Kansas City, which was heavily influenced by Harley Race. At Texas, which Texas had the Funk's territory. And it had Fritz von Erich's territory, which was CCW. In Tennessee, you had Jerry Lawler and Jerry Jarrett's territory, along with, you even had outlaw territories that weren't recognized by the NWA, which is what Macho Man's father started. In Florida, you had one ran by Eddie Graham and Dusty Rhodes. You moved up north, you had the Crockett promotion in the Carolinas. Georgia had Georgia Championship Wrestling. The Midwest region where we're from, Ed Farhat, who was better known as the Sheik, and Big Time Wrestling, which was primarily Michigan, but it had some Ohio and Illinois stuff. Vern Gagne did Minnesota as the AWA. Vince Sr.'s promotion, which was still looked at as the big time there, even when it was in the NWA, was in the New England area, which is more recognized as WWE today, your Connecticut's, your Pennsylvania kind of thing. They're very important, because sure, you had your mainstays. Usually it was whoever was promoting it, or their friends or their family. Yeah. So like in Texas, the Von Erichs never left. Sheik obviously didn't really leave his, or if they did, it was a big thing. And this was so that way nobody got stale. Like, I'm sure you're watching, or if you watch SmackDown, you wonder why you've got to see Baron Corbin again. Or you're wondering why you've got to see Dolph Ziggler again. Well, back then, not everyone had every television channel.
Right.
So, let's just pick Andre the Giant. You start in Vince's territory, win some battle royals, win a couple tag matches, go for a heavyweight or tag title, lose it by DQ. Or lose a loser leaves town match. Well, instead of him putzing around and you wonder, and well, he lost, what is he going to do now? He's now off your station. He is now in Texas, helping the Von Erichs fight the Freebirds. Once that's done in, sometimes it would be a month. Usually it was 3 to 4 months, depending if they ran trimesters or quarters. You'd go to the next promotion. And this helped you not only stay fresh, but if it's something like Andre, he became an attraction, which is what Paul Heyman likes to compare Brock Lesnar to now. You don't get oversaturated with him.
Right.
Or, in the case of Pat Patterson, you can jump around from babyface to heel, depending on the promotion you're in, who you're fighting. It helps you create your character. Like Roddy Piper in the Oregon territory helps define his mouth and the kilt. The territories were important to keeping fresh, creating yourself. Feuds could happen, so you could disappear. George the Animal Steel, I was famous, he was a teacher. He would only be around for summers. He would, dominate all the smaller guys, maybe win the mid-card title, and he'd get his big match with Bruno, or his big match with Bobo Brazil. Lose that, disappear, and then he could come right back in. You didn't have, like I said, the big thing it helped was freshness. The other thing it helped with is generally there was the one NWA title. Had a committee. They voted on who they thought should be the champion. And the champion would go from territory to territory. Obviously, you can't be there all the time.
Right, and that was I know that was like a huge deal.
Yes.
Having the NWA champion showing up in your town.
Yes.
That's something Ric Flair always talked about. He would just show up in some town, some promotion, and he'd fight the local babyface there. He wouldn't win. The babyface wouldn't win, or it'd be a fluke finish and make that guy look like $1 million. So he just took Ric Flair to the max, and now he's a star in this territory. He's making money now. So that's why,
A lot of times they would go to a draw, or it would be one of those where he hits Ric Flair with his finisher, and the ref starts counting 1, 2, and then the time limit happens. Something like that usually happened. And it wasn't just in America. The NWA had promotions. I'm pretty sure there was one in Australia at one point. Japan had one. Puerto Rico had one. But I know to the listeners that I'm sure it's popped up in your mind, what happened when the world champion wasn't in your territory. What are your guys fighting for? Because as Dusty Rhodes says, if you don't want to be champion, why are you here?
Right.
A lot of territories had their own, we'd call them mid-card titles now, but it would be a United States, a national championship, a television title. They even had some creative ones, like Texas had a brass knucks title at one point. And those would be the titles you'd fight for, and that would kind of be your ranking system for when the champion came in. Oh, Ric Flair just won the U.S. title a month ago. Harley Race is coming through, so then you not only know who the top guy is, but it's also a champion versus champion match. On the rare occasion that there was already a title in that promotion, like the AWA had their own in Minnesota, or the WWF had their champion, NWA champion would still come through, and you would get a large blow-off champion match. I know there's typically never a true winner, because Senior's not going to let his guy lose, and the NWA committee's not going to let their guy lose, but still, it brought in the money. I mean, a key example was Harley Race would come through with his title. He would fight Nick Bockwinkel. The names alone might not be too familiar to people now, but then, I mean, it just, they were up in the rafters, the fans were.
Yeah.
You had Bruno Sammartino fighting Harley Race. It was just amazing to see the fans that would come in sell out arenas like the Madison Square Garden.
That's what I always enjoyed about reading about those times. It wasn't really like TV was a thing.
Mm-hmm.
It was more going, and it was like I know you said Madison Square Garden, but yeah, I'm thinking about like the smaller towns, like your Little Rocks, your Knoxvilles, your wherever.
Even Detroit to an extent.
In Detroit, it was like a big deal to go to the wrestling show,
mm-hmm.
right?
I mean, as far back as people could remember, I mean, one of the first lines Dusty Rhodes says in his DVD documentary for WWE is, the weekend his daddy would get paid, they'd go down, they'd get some lemonade or some iced tea, they'd get some chicken fried steak, and they'd go to the wrestling show. That's just, it seems like, especially with Southern families, because I know my great-grandma tells me that my great-grandfather's aunt was one of those rowdy women that would throw the chairs at the wrestlers, at the ring, whatever she wanted. It was just, it was a big deal for people. Wrestlers were one of the first mainstream celebrities on TV. It's not talked about a lot, but your Gorgeous George, even Lou Thez, Vern Gagne was one of the first people to do advertisements on TV.
If you go talk to, like, if your listeners are going to go talk to your grandparents about, like, what they know about wrestling, they'll probably say Gorgeous George. Yeah. Like that was
Lou Thez, Pat O'Connor, Nature Boy Buddy Rogers. Sure, you'll get your Ric Flairs and your Dusty Rhodes. A big one that gets thrown around is Nick Bockwinkel and Larry Zbyszko.
It's also very interesting if your grandparents live in a certain territory. It's like here, like if you ask somebody if you ask like my dad or like a couple of the older men that I know, they'll say like George the Animal Steel, stuff like that.
Bobo Brazil.
Yeah. I have a grandparent that lives in Tennessee, and she'll name a bunch of wrestlers from like that area, because everybody knows like I'm like the wrestling nerd in the family, right? It's always like,
right,
oh, this fucking kid still watches wrestling, but like to them back then, they're just as bad as me. They thought it was real, like the cat wasn't out of the bag yet.
And that's why being the champion was so important. You had to put a deposit down on the title. You always hear the story of when Ric Flair went to WWF for the first time. He had the big gold belt. They're like, will you send the title back? And he says, will you send my deposit? And they told him no, so he kept it. But fast forward a little bit with the territories. Vince Jr., even though he always gets the bad rap, was not the only person who kind of flipped the territories on their head. Jim Crockett Jr. did it. He did Jim Crockett Promotions. He then sold to Ted Turner. Ted Turner then started putting all the pieces to WCW. Well, whatever talent Vince hadn't already gotten, Turner got. So that's why Ric Flair, Harley Race, the Steiners, Luger, Sting, Terry Funk, anyone that wasn't in WWE showed up there. There's a few rare occasions, like obviously if you're the Von Erichs, you're going to stay in Texas because your dad runs the promotion. Or if you're Andre the Giant, or Bruiser Brody would be a better example, you're going to jump around. Well, so then it went from having the one NWA title, which was looked at as the title, then having the NWA title, Vince's WWF title, the AWA title, and then a couple smaller heavyweight titles that promotions that didn't want to join with any of the big three created. Big ones being the WCCW title, Mid-South, which was ran by Bill Watts and was in the Oklahoma territory, and then the CWA title, which was the Jerry Lawler one. Time went on, more promotions started combining. Jerry Lawler won the AWA title, so then it combined his CWA with it. And then he defeated Kerry Von Erich to combine the WCCW title into that. And then the NWA title, they brought Mid-South in, so then that's when they got their Sting, that's when they got Dr. Death Steve Williams, they morphed that title in. So, more titles kept going into it, making more stock, adding more lineage. Well, AWA folded. Nothing really happened with that. The NWA title, WCW happened. It was its own thing. They had an NWA and a WCW title. It was confusing because they were represented by one belt, but sometimes the NWA title would change hands and the WCW wouldn't. Eventually, the NWA separated, and it wasn't ever dormant. ECW famously became a promotion when Shane Douglas threw down the NWA title. You hear about how in the late 90s and the early 2000s, Dan Severn showed up on WWE TV as the NWA champion. Colt Cabana was an NWA champion.
Boom, boom.
The bald-headed man that runs SmackDown, Adam Pearce, was an NWA champion. Robert Conway, former WWE Raw Tag Champion, was an NWA champion. And as I said, it wasn't ever truly dormant. Then within recent years, I'd say within the last 5, Nick Aldis, Mickey James' husband, he was a former TNA champion. He had the NWA, the big gold belt, with the backing of some people like Harley Race when he was alive, Rick Steamboat. Title started gaining prominence. NWA came back. Cody Rhodes at one point held the title. The NWA, it's not what it once was. I would say it is a solid tied for third. It fluctuates with Impact and Ring of Honor for its importance. I'm sure you're wondering why we got this history lesson, this brief, there's so much more to it, this history lesson on the territories.
I am.
Why it matters.
I'm speaking for the audience. Yes, I am.
What's this old geezer talking about? Who cares about the territories? Vince Jr. ran him into the ground. He bought his competition.
Oh, yeah.
The two words that come to mind, and the two words that bring this fantasy booking to a whole, is Kenny Omega. I know he recently lost the Impact title to Christian. I think that's only to give Impact a little bit of a nice rub, as Bruce Pritchard would say, he sprinkled some Omega dust on Impact. Now Christian sprinkling some Christian dust while they're trying to get talent. I think he's going to win it back at one point. He's still AEW champion. He had the Impact title. He's wrestled in the Ring of Honor, so it's not out of the question for him to go there and win the Ring of Honor title. AAA, he is the champion there. He's won the New Japan. And with this Forbidden Door, everyone is coming from everywhere. Who knows where anyone is going to show up next? I think the piece, or I hope, slowly morphs all of these promotions into one joining promotion under the NWA umbrella. And then each of these promotions will be recognized as territories. AEW is kind of, south. NWA will be out west. Ring of Honor is the little bit of Midwest that WWE doesn't have a hand on. Impact is, I guess you'd say the main South, because AEW is more your Georgia and your Carolinas. And the NWA has, your Tennessee, your Texas. Everything's covered.
So you're saying this is like a modern day territory system you're proposing?
Yeah. Yes. I think it will help. It'll keep people from getting stale. It will help younger talent get to work with all different types of talent, backstage and on screen. I mean, just a quick segue. The AEW, has Dean Malenko, Billy Gunn, Arn Anderson, Tully Blanchard, just to name some backstage. Jim Ross, all that stuff. Impact is D'Lo Brown, Tommy Dreamer. NWA has Austin Idol. Before he passed, Road Warrior Animal was there. Ring of Honor always gets help from wherever they're at. At one point it was Bully Ray. They have knowledge that they can gain they wouldn't be able to get by just going to, say, an NXT or just showing up in an indie promotion. I think we saw the beginning of this with the Empower pay-per-view, because they all had representation. I think this one heavyweight title will help because, A, it makes it easier to follow. You got one championship.
Right.
You don't have to, oh, well, he's champion in AEW, so that's more important than being champion of Ring of Honor. I think a world championship should be important, especially if it's got world in the name.
Right. You don't have to argue who's better.
Yeah. Then, combining everything into just one title will help the mid-card title become prevalent. It'll make the tag team titles prevalent as well, because if you're not fighting for the world title, you're going to fight for that, the television in Ring of Honor or AEW, the X Division and Impact, Intercontinental New Japan, or the tag titles, so that way you can, hopefully, when the champion comes to your area, you can fight him. There's two key booking points that I'd want to focus on if everything fell into place like that. The first is the Crockett Cup. Now, current fans have seen something like this with the Dusty Rhodes Classic. My big gripe with the Classic was the first two, you could see a mile away who was going to win. Not only based on the tag teams, because the one was Finn Balor and Samoa Joe, but you could also tell who was going to win because they stole storylines from the old NWA days with Dusty. Joe and Balor, they were enemies. Oh, they're not going to work together and win. Well, it's happened with Dusty and Nikita Koloff.
Yeah.
But the important part of the Crockett Cup would be, if you have all these promotions, just think of the names. AEW has Lucha Bros, they have FTR, they have the Young Bucks, Jurassic Express, they have the Private Party. Impact has the Good Brothers, they have Motor City Machine Guns. Ring of Honor has the Briscoes. And that's just from 4 of the promotions. You get tag teams from all over. You could have possibly the best tag team tournament. And realistically, if WWE's not involved, who are you leaving out? The New Day and the Usos?
Yeah, and I think more the New Day. The New Day
Yeah.
would be the main attraction. No offense to the Usos, but
Yeah, you're not missing much anymore. Like, tag teams are, for whatever reason, an indie thing. I don't know if it's true that Vince hates them or what. I think a Crockett Cup would be great. Especially, I mean, you'd be able to carry on the tradition. I mean, I don't know how many there were. I remember watching tapes. That was like America's first introduction to, Dean Malenko, or a specific Guerrero, or Chris Benoit even. Yeah, because they toyed around with the idea in 2019 of bringing it back, but it was only NWA teams, so there wasn't a mainstream appeal to it. But then you had, the first Crockett Cup. Where is it? Yeah, I mean, the Road Warriors won it, so you get to share your lineage with the Warriors. Then the next year is when those superpowers won it, Nikita and Dusty.
It has
88, Sting and Luger.
Has history already built into it.
And then the team that won in 2019, the Villain Enterprises. I mean, they're not a slouch in the Indies by any means. For the longest time, Villain Enterprises were like the big America's answer, in my opinion, to the Bullet Club. You had Marty Scurll, you had Brody King, you had PCO. But yeah, there's so much lineage built into it, and I think this idea popped in my head when David Crockett, who used to be an announcer for Jim Crockett Promotions in WCW, he showed up in AEW one week. Now, I know they have a lot of older guys come back because, their connection with Cody or Jim Ross or Tony Schiavone, but I just thought it was coincidental that this Forbidden Door happens, and all of a sudden, David Crockett comes back for the first time in years. Could he possibly be loaning his name again? But this time to a big Crockett Cup? I would like it as a tag team guy, but I don't even think it's necessary. Because even the Rock and Roll Express are still fighting. Throw them in. But the big thing that I've been fixated on for as long as Kenny's been the belt collector is if he wins all these titles, he combines them all into the NWA. I think maybe, AEW becomes the home of it, but it's still the NWA. He comes out with the titles. He says he's beaten everybody. He's beaten Andrade in Mexico. He's beaten Kenta in Japan. He's beaten Jay White. He's beaten Christian Cage. He's beaten Moose. He's beaten Chris Jericho. Who is left for him to beat? And then Cody Rhodes' music hits. You can see the confusion on Kenny and Don Callis' face, and Kenny instantly grabs the mic and says, "Cody, I don't know what you're doing out here. You lost the match to Jericho all those years ago. You can never challenge an AEW championship again, the heavyweight championship." And that's Cody can smile. He can look around. He can grab his mic and tell Kenny, "I know what the contract said, and it said I can never challenge for an AEW World Championship. Now tell me, Kenny, what does the initials on that championship say?" And then Kenny will grab it, and he'll be a smart ass self. "What's the NWA, of course?" And Cody again can poke it and go, "The NWA, a promotion that my father helped lay the foundation down for. And tonight I'm going to challenge you for that title, and I'm going to help rebuild what he started." And then it gets Cody back into the heavyweight title hunt. He can win the NWA championship, not taking anything away from when he won it when he beat Nick Aldis for it last time, but now it'll have so much more importance because you'll have all these titles combined into it. And from there on, he can travel and show up on the different shows. And it won't just be on TV, because NWA right now is on YouTube. some of AEW and Ring of Honor's better shows are on YouTube.
Right.
There's all the differing channels that people get with cable subscriptions. And then you never know. Will they show up at Wrestle Kingdom, New Japan? Will they show up at Bound for Glory, Impact? Will they show up at All In or All Out? It's just a matter of, will they book the rest of the people in that territory? Or what kind of matches are built off it? And I think you do that, and that would not only light a fire under Vince McMahon, but it could actually scare him, because the last time that he was in any real danger was when all the promotions were teaming up
against him. Yeah.
But the issue there, though, was they fell apart because they wanted to be the one to take him out. I think you have all these promotions like AEW, Impact, NWA, and Ring of Honor that have been below Vince's thumbs for years. And you add in the combustible elements of CM Punk's, Daniel Bryan's, Sting's, Bray Wyatt's, Braun Strowman's, people that have not necessarily been wronged. They have something to prove to Vince. I think this NWA idea will be one of the better things to happen to wrestling in a long time. People stay fresh, and then Vince has his true competition.
So you think the Kenny the Belt Collector is gonna last longer? Because I think, in my view, that it's been winding down, that he's about to fall apart. So you think this is gonna revamp and go into full gear, no pun intended for the pay-per-view name? And second, is it a concern in your fantasy booking that the promoters of these promotions are selfish? Like you said, it didn't work last time because they all wanted to be the guy. Do you think these relationships will last through the Forbidden Door as well, or is it more likely for the Forbidden Door to be closed due to egos?
I think if they play it off right, the Belt Collector could last for a lot longer. I think Christian winning the Impact title, like I said, it got it so that way the Impact title could be back on Impact for a little bit. Put it on someone. I don't think it's a coincidence that they put it on someone that's in AEW. They put it on someone that's familiar with TNA. TNA fans are familiar with. Just to kind of let Kenny do something with the AEW title while, these Punks and these Bryans are coming in.
Right.
I think he eventually could win that. Ring of Honor, they've had their titles change on house shows quite a bit. I mean, what would get people to tune into Ring of Honor more than, oh, did you hear Kenny Omega just won the title in Saskatchewan?
And Fairbanks?
NWA, he could win on YouTube. In Japan and Mexico, I mean, as long as COVID holds off, it's just a flight away.
Right.
Look at how quickly Jericho decided to go to Japan, and they set things up. As for the promoters, I think Tony Khan's a mark. I think he would do anything to let his wrestling dreams come true. He's already got Jim Ross and Tony Schiavone. He's got both Rhodes' sons. He wants to be the NWA. Impact is being run by Scott D'Amore and Tommy Dreamer. And I think Tommy loves the business so much, and he loves Cody Rhodes. I think he'd be able to convince his friend Scott to work well with him. The NWA is ran by Billy Corgan. And if you remember Billy Corgan, I forget the logistics of it, but he wanted to work with Vince. And Vince told him no. So, there's the revenge factor there. New Japan, as far as I know, the booker is Gato. And him and Jericho have that camaraderie. I'm not 100% sure on AAA booker.
Money talks as well.
Yeah.
You can put relationships aside if you're getting paid, if the business is booming.
100%. I mean, because a lot of these, I mean, AEW is doing well, but they're not like, I wouldn't put them as a top tier promotion yet. I think they're getting there, but I don't think they've like reached over that mountain yet of, say, a WCW. Impact has tasted it and they've piddled around in it. They want to make it back, especially being on their 8th name change. The NWA wants to be back to what it was. Ring of Honor, I'm sure they're tired of being looked at as the ECW, like the little promotion that could. And Mexico and Japan is always looking for that entrance into America. What a better way than to be a part of the National Wrestling Alliance. And then you could still keep your small indie promotions, like your PWGs, your GCWs. Imagine the hype if, I mean, I don't think Kenny, but say John Moxley went to the NWA title, shows up to GCW, Nick Gage challenges him for it. Where else would Nick Gage get a shot at the NWA title?
Right.
Or
like we talked about earlier, he could go, I don't know, name a city, Dayton, Ohio. Maybe there's some promotion there with this guy named, I don't know.
Logan, I know in the Midwest,
Logan, the world champion of Dayton, Ohio. Like he can fight Moxley, like Ric Flair, like we talked about Ric Flair used to do.
I know in the Midwest right now, there's a guy floating around. He trained in Michigan called Travis Titan. He's appeared on AEW. He's a good guy. I mean, imagine the rub you'd get fighting an Omega or a Moxley, but not only them, the NWA World Champion. And you can last an hour with them. A guy that's holding a belt that was once held by Flair, Rhodes, the Funks, the Briscoes. It would do nothing but elevate a career. If this happened, even if they didn't want to be called the NWA, which I don't think it would be bad if they wanted to go with something else, but I think the NWA would be perfect because it would elevate all the stars. It would give people the ability to go from place to place. I mean, they're showing it now with Christian going to Impact, the Good Brothers going to AEW, Japan sending people to AEW. Obviously, they're okay with sharing talent.
Right.
Yeah, they're going to make money.
Will remain open.
Yeah, and it's easy for people to get merchandise from these stars now, because even if the promotion doesn't have it, they can open a Pro Wrestling Tee store. So say on your little basic TV channel, you see Travis Titan fight John Moxley or Kenny Omega. You can then see if he has a Pro Wrestling Tee store, or if he doesn't, make a couple designs and potentially make one for him.
The internet is a great thing.
Very.
If
I think
coming
this
back in 2021, 2022, whenever this could happen, I think it would be if it worked out, if it pans out the way you just laid it out, I think it would be a great thing for wrestling. I think it's just it's kind of like what we have now with the Forbidden Door, just amped up to 100.
Yeah.
And it'd be great because we see WWE. It seems like they're putting themselves in a position to sell to somebody like a Disney or an NBC, to where it's going to become a more standardized product more than it already is, and more of a TV show about wrestling instead of a wrestling TV show. And if this happens, because that's going to turn a lot of people off, it's starting to turn me off a little bit, outside of the few great things they got going on over there, like with talent that they just can't deny. But having the alternative of just classic pro wrestling, which is which I think, and I know everybody who would listen to this would think is the greatest sport ever. It's so intriguing. The athleticism, the story.
Yeah.
It'd be a great alternative to what the billionaire company is doing.
I mean, it would just...
bringing them all together would be able to support everybody, because especially with the pandemic that just happened, I know, like, I don't know, Ring of Honor, Impact, and AEW probably aren't going out of business anytime soon. I know Impact was closed a couple years ago, but I feel that's not the case at this point. But there's a lot of smaller promotions that we probably don't know about, that could use that revenue boost of a Kenny Omega, Jon Moxley, Cody Rhodes coming in, even just for that one night. That revenue they can make in one night could support them for the next couple of shows, and I think that's what's most important.
Because they wouldn't have to. Because I know an issue way back when was that if you were under the NWA umbrella, you had to do things a certain way. It doesn't have to be the case now. I mean, Young Bucks helped form Pro Wrestling Guerrilla. I'm sure they would just go there to help him out. ECW, or what's the other big one? One Moxley was in, the hardcore one.
Oh. Is that CZW?
Yeah. Like, again, they wouldn't have to fall into an NWA thing. You just have to have the right champion there. And I think with your previous statement about issues potentially with promoters, like I said, you've already got Ross and Shivani in AEW. You've got Flair helping out in NWA and Austin Idol. You've got people floating around everywhere. I mean, even D'Lo Brown worked in the territories. You've got people that saw what caused the failure, and it was the greedy wrestling promoter. I don't think any of these guys have it in them, because the story always goes they would put on a super show, and Greg Gagne walked back, and he saw an NWA guy trying to sign an AWA guy. I think if you share the talent correctly, and you do, like I said, with Christian now, or the Good Brothers, you're not going to have that issue.
I think if Sony and Disney can share Spider-Man, I think we can share Kenny Omega and all them.
Yeah. It would be cool, because then, you know, say Andrade's supposed to fight Bandito on Ring of Honor, and Bandito gets the flu. They have a whole talent pool that they could reach into of someone that equals Bandito, and it's, oh, you're not getting him tonight, but you're getting Jon Moxley, or you're getting, you know, Luke Gallows. Because it'll be good for the fans, it'll be good for the promoters, it'll be good for wrestling, it'll be good for the wrestlers, because it'll help them. Like, I think a gimmick like the Varsity Blondes in AEW, I think what would help them out a lot right now is being able to work with differing tag teams, or having differing people like the Rock and Roll Express, who show up in the indies every so often, work with them and give them advice not only on their wrestling but their gimmicks. So I just think all around this is a great idea, and being a wrestling history fan, being able to witness a renaissance of what was looked at as the wrestling mecca, as much as people don't want you to believe that there was something before WWE or WWF, I think it would just be one of the coolest things to witness.
Yeah, that's something I definitely would like to see too. I was just talking about it the other day, but I wish I was born like during like the 70s and 80s.
Huh?
I feel like I'd be a pro wrestler right now if I was born back then, because the idea of just going like on the road, making like $20 in a hot dog, that just sounds like the fucking life, and that just doesn't happen anymore.
Not only that, but a lot of the gimmicks were based off of, I I mean, it was cool because, as a quick segue, you would either get something based off your real life, like there was a guy called the Crusher in the Minnesota Territory, and he would just go into bars and beat people up. He would come out carrying a beer keg, and that was his gimmick. Or when Superstar Billy Graham broke in, he was trained by Eddie Graham and Jerry Graham. So instead of having to have him do something crazy, since he was a ripped man, and he looked like he could just beat your ass, he became Billy Graham. He was just a younger relative of the Grahams. So with that, he got the rub, and then they sent him on his way. You know, he didn't have to create a new gimmick every time he went somewhere. He could just roll with what he had. There's so much learning to be had. Just, it's a different time.
It's probably the best time.
But I really do believe that some sort of cross-promotional main heavyweight championship would benefit. Like I said, the big ones that I'm looking at, I guess I'd call it my NWA 6, would be the NWA, Impact, AEW, Ring of Honor, AAA, and New Japan Pro Wrestling. People like Chris Jericho involved, who's always willing to help the younger talent, and Tommy Dreamer. I mean, sky's the limit.
I don't think wrestlers are as selfish anymore.
No.
I know there's still like that mentality of I need to get myself over and I will stab you in the back, but I don't think that's as prevalent anymore.
No. I think this would help.
I don't think anybody is insecure in their position in any given company. No. I think everybody. I think the wrestlers come up today, they're more fans than anything. And they want what's best for the industry.
And this would give you the opportunity. I mean, I'm not doing well in AEW. Hey, Tony, can I go to Impact for a couple months? Or, you know, I'm trying to think of a good example of who could be an Andre. PCO, the former Pierre Alouette, the Quebecer. He reinvented himself. He's like a Frankenstein's monster. He could show up at different shows and just be like an Andre and win a battle royal, and the fans would love it. Or have like a female wrestler like Jordy Ann Grace show up somewhere and fight a male superstar. And there's just so many possibilities. Kind of do like Impact and Ring of Honor do now, where if they're in Philly, you know, you have a battle royal, you have that token ECW guy come in.
Great.
And there's so much you could do under one umbrella, especially with the financial backing of New Japan, Tony Khan, the knowledge of everyone else. Like I said, I get excited thinking about a rebuilding of the territories.
This is what keeps Logan up at night. This is what makes Logan stay up till 3 a.m.
This is rebuild the territories. I'll train and I'll fight for the big gold belt. I'll leave Shane McMahon in the background. I'll go for that 10 pounds of gold.
Then go beat Shane McMahon's ass with it.
Yeah, I'd say this clip here, this could be the beginning of the YouTube video of me going for the 10 pounds of gold. And then, yeah, I'll go beat Shane McMahon at WrestleMania 42. And life will be good.
Just hopefully doesn't go for your pump.
I'll tape it down.
All right. So I think that's gonna be a wrap here.
Yeah.
Again,
if
you made it this far.
Yeah.
Into this, I wasn't lying 50 minutes ago when I said Logan can talk about any wrestling subject in depth.
Past, present, or future.
So, like I said, this one was more taking place over decades. We started back in the olden times. We came up to Kenny Omega in his current run. In the future, it'll probably be more specific,
centered.
But this show, I just really wanted to show off my co-host here, And if you made
there's a lot in this book, I'll have to come back and listen for more.
Yes, and if you made it this far, I believe we deserve, if you're not already subscribed already on Spotify or Apple, that you should definitely subscribe now. I feel like you earned it. I feel like we earned it. If you made it this far, and you follow us on Twitter, so you can hear Logan's thoughts 24/7.
Yeah, they're there. Good, bad, and ugly.
That the ad is at PW Proverbs, PWPROVERBS. I think I did that kind of fast. At PW Proverbs. TikTok at Pro Wrestling Proverbs. I hopefully will have something up the next couple of days for you guys. And if you might actually be listening to this from TikTok, because the couple of TikToks I have on there have a couple of hundred of views, and that's
very good.
I think that's a big deal. I'm very proud of.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we do have an Instagram. I have not posted on that though. I don't know. I gotta get somebody else on that.
That can be the first look of the Book of Logan.
Yes.
We'll give a little sneak peek on there.
Yes, on Instagram.
Through the pages, maybe you'll be able to see some future talking points.
I believe our Instagram handle is Pro Wrestling Proverbs. I am 99% sure. I will pull it up though. Yes, at Pro Wrestling Proverbs on Instagram. That's how little I've used it so far. Yeah, I think that's all of our socials.
Yeah.
All right, until next time, ladies and gentlemen, this has been Logan Scripture.